Hello again. This is Dr. Gene Mesco talking to you from the Church of Science, and you gotta have faith. I'm gonna do a little evangelizing today. I realized I had a long couple of weeks. I missed a podcast last week. Lucky episode 13, and my drive to try to figure out American politics. And I realized I got the whole model worked out. The whole model for civilization involves getting everybody to believe the same thing. Because that's ultimately what we're all doing. Ultimately, we're all making shit up. But I realized what churches are doing and have been doing for thousands of years. Once you move beyond the basic family tribal unit, where you have basic authority, usually enforced with familial force, dads, moms, parents, elders, doing things, and everybody said, oh, we're going to listen to the rules. Why should we listen to the rules? And if you look at the church rules over the years, with a tip of the hat to George Carlin for these, the idea that most of the rules actually make sense. Well, and that's actually how evolution works. If something works, it persists. And when we've had artificial selection for civilization, we had to come up with rules that people could accept without questioning. And if you're part of the group, if you're in the civilization, you accept that you shouldn't kill people, you shouldn't steal their stuff. All of those really great rules. You shouldn't covet too much. Everybody should have to deal with what they're getting in the economy, because the economy and the government are determine the rules we all play by if we're all in the same civilization, if we're all civilized. But if we're not civilized, then you can kill those people, because those people are less than human. Human versus Homo sapiens is the big distinction here. That is the big distinction to distinguish a civilized person by your definition. And it's, like I said, it's what we make up. It's what we believe are the rules, what's good. And that's why gods were invented. Gods were invented to tell us that this is the ultimate good. This guy, this gal, those guys and gals, whichever gods we've had over the thousands of years of human civilization, have been the ones that have come out and said, you gotta believe, and then because of that, we're gonna do all these things. We'll conquer the infidels. We will have faith in this, and we'll run our society this way, and we'll make up these rules. And you don't have to worry about being too smart. That's what people who did religion figured out, and it's worked for thousands of years. But we're at a point that we have to get over the bullshit. And that's the real problem. Because the argument for this or that deity, not a single one of them would stand up in a court of law. Not a single one. I mean, what evidence is there for Jesus or Allah or Buddha or Thor or Odin or Zeus or Zolzar? Any of them. We've all got these deities out there. The majority of people believe in something because we don't know. Because we're fucking mostly hairless apes, and we try to figure stuff out. And so we got to make stuff up. And so belief becomes the essence of every civilization. Now, civilization is then whatever, if the same civilization is whatever, if you get a bunch of the same people to believe in something, they're all accepting the same rules then. And I want us all to believe in science. I want us to all believe in our senses and what we can measure and what we can prove. And we'll make one basic assumption. Here's what we're all going to believe in. That because we don't have any proof for this or that God, we're going to operate under the assumption that there isn't any God, that we're on our own. We are lonely humans circling on the third rock from the sun, on a distant arm of a spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy, traveling through space and time, and doing the best we can. And the best we can do is actually use the knowledge we've acquired over the years. Knowledge includes the evidence of the validity of a lot of religious rules, for example. We'll have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if we want to think about civilization, and religion's given us civilization, given us morals and ethics, then we can say, well, what is it? What is it about the rules? Well, the rules of don't hurt anybody, don't kill anybody. And that's where we can get the commandments for the Church of Science. I realized we had to have commandments. It's not good enough to believe, we got to make rules from it. And civil rules, and rules for civilization, are what we think about as ethics. A lot of professional organizations have ethics. If you're a physician or a lawyer or an engineer or a scientist, there are professional ethics that are expected. Business ethics might be an oxymoron for a lot of people, but if you're going to do honest business, you're supposed to follow certain rules, pay your taxes, and do all that fun stuff to be a member of civilization. And that's part of the problem. If we're not members of the same civilization, you can do business deals like the orange parasite does, where as long as you make money, you win. Doesn't matter if you're delivering shit for a product. That's not a big deal. Because if you're in a different civilization, because ultimately a psychopath like the orange parasite is a civilization of one. Somebody who doesn't give a rat's ass about anybody but themselves is a psychopath or a sociopath. Well, you got to talk to the psychology people for that one. But the point being, you don't accept the major group that you're technically a part of, and you do stuff that benefits you. You're willing to break the rules. And if we're all going to follow the rules, what would they be in the Church of Science? What sort of commandments we could come up with? Well, if we visit the Church of Science through the history of life, if we say that physics and chemistry and biology give us the knowledge that we need, and we're going to try to work from knowledge, what has that taught us? Well, that hell and death is non-life. That goes all the way back. Let's look at the history of Earth. Let's go back in time to the origin of our freaking planet. Yes, the physicists tell us the universe is billions of years old, 15, 16, I forget the current estimate. But I could do the one for biology, that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. But for 1 billion years of that, we were just a hot rock. We were a hot mess. And biologically, we refer to that as the Hadean era. Hades, like hell. And the Hadean era was volcanic and gaseous and nasty and hot. And no life. There was no life. And that's the ultimate good. And we should take care of life. That's the first commandment of the Church of Science. Take care of life. Because it's better than non-life. I like to watch a little sci-fi fantasy. And my daughter is a fan, and we talk about it. And we're always amazed at the villains who worship death gods. And it's like, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to worship a god who wants to kill everybody, who wants to kill a bunch of people? Because we're not going to leave you with a lot to argue with. In order to praise the god, you got to kill somebody, and possibly yourself, or they could kill you. No, we should take a little more Buddhist mode and just appreciate every mode of life that there is. Appreciate that life is this precious evolutionary process whereby we stay more organized and we gather information. That's the key thing here. Information is stored in DNA, and all we had for billions of years was natural selection. We had basic mechanisms from the bottom up organizing life. RNA was probably first. RNA and DNA and protein forming the central dogma of biology, where cellular systems have been able to crank out or be able to capture matter and energy and crank out replicants of themselves, and then they mutate and evolve. And that natural selection led to plants and animals and fungi and all the things that are alive today on the planet. Millions of species. Been plenty have gone extinct. We've seen that too in the fossil record. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that the first commandment is take care of life. Get us from the Hadean period into the Archean period. The Archean period starts about 3.5 billion years ago when cellular life evolved. Cellular life evolved and gives us that basic process of saying, wow, we can do this. We are alive. And that's all there was for 1 billion years on life on Earth. And so we should take care of life. We should make sure we keep things alive as much as possible. Now, obviously, this is going to be one of those tricky things because within that first commandment, if you're taking care of life, you got to take care of your own life. See, obviously, self-defense is part of the game, but giving yourself up for the group is also part of the game. If the greater good is going to last, and from a personal perspective, we don't know if there's an afterlife. We don't know if there are spirits or ghosts or whatever it might be that would float off souls into another reality, and we'll all find out when we're dead. But for right now, since we don't have any good evidence for any of that, and people have been looking at it for thousands of years, all we can do is say, well, maybe there isn't. Maybe this is all we've got. And so the best thing we can do is keep our species alive. And beyond our species, we should try to keep as many of the other organisms that are on our planet, that are all part of our biosphere. And so we should have this, I think the Buddhists probably did it best by saying, just appreciate life as precious. Take it if you have to. If somebody threatens you, then all bets are off. Then it's a battle to the death, and then taking care of life involves defending yourself and your group. But if we were all the same group, then we wouldn't have to worry about it. Then we can go out and battle the space aliens. Wouldn't that be great? If we had a unified human front that said, hey, we're all in this together, and what kind of rules would we make? Well, if we had all those rules, we could then move to the next stage of life, where instead of being all these independent cells wandering around the primordial soup, way back in the Archean era, we could move to the Phanerozoic era, when eukaryotes evolved, and then multicellularity. And eukaryotic cells and multicellular organisms are an example of societies, of multiple individuals joining up, linking up in a variety of ways. And at the cellular level, we had endosymbiosis. We had cells absorb each other into this matrix that we call a eukaryotic cell, and we have mitochondria, which keep a little of their DNA from their original bacterial ancestry. Plants have chloroplasts with their own DNA from that bacterial ancestry. And we get these complex cells with big nuclei and tucking away all their DNA. And then somebody evolved adhesion proteins, cell adhesion molecules that allow embryos to stick together. And that's how we built multicellular organisms. And we started making, we did mitosis, and we figured out a new way to do cell division, which is what eukaryotes do different than prokaryotes, than the bacteria. And we figured out how to make cells. And then along the way, sex evolved to make all sorts of fun combinations. So now we have all this genetic mixing going on. We still have mutations. We still have natural selection all through history. But it leads us to the second commandment. The second commandment, after take care of life, is basically be nice to each other. Take care of the group. Take care of yours. Take care of home. Take care of the group that you're in. Be aware. Work together. I gotta work on a better formulation of that. I haven't quite decided how to distill that down to a single thou shalt type commandment. But can't we all get along? I mean, once we're taking care of life, then we gotta say, all right, well, which life is that? We're gonna take care of our life. And that's what we should do. And once we're doing that, then we can move on to the next level. Because once we get all these animals going, and we have all of this system, we can then say, well, what's our group? And I guess maybe the second commandment should be know yourself. Have knowledge. And that brings us back to information theory, which is one of the guiding principles that we're using. That's an aspect of science and part of math. And information theory that says information is what allows us to fight entropy, to stay alive in the first place. So while we're keeping things alive, we have to prioritize. We have to say what's more important. Right now, we got to choose. Then we get into all those wonderful ethical dilemmas that the philosophers throw at us. Do you throw the directions on the train tracks to save one person or to save 5 people? Who are the 5 people? Who's the one person? Obviously, we make choices like that, but you got to know yourself. What you have to do is embrace your personal standards. You got to have your own morals. You got to stand up and say, and that actually leads us to the third commandment. Because once you know yourself, And and that's coming out of all these multicellular and social organisms that are evolving during the Phanerozoic. And then somewhere way back in the Cambrian, over 500 million years ago. So we've gone through 3 billion years of evolution with pretty much nothing but cells on Earth. And we've learned how to take care of ourselves and take care of our groups and understand who we are. And then we get vertebrates. Vertebrates are bodies with vertebra, with backbones, with spines. Have a fucking spine. Stand up for something. Once you know who you are, once you understand your place in the universe, that you're a mostly hairless ape on the third rock from the sun, now what you want to do is decide what's important. You got to set priorities outside of yourself. And then you should stand up for it. You should have a spine, have a backbone, and proudly declare whatever it is that you think is important. And that's what you should devote your life to. And it could be multiple things. It could be one thing. That's up to you. That's the beauty of this process. Since we're all individual conscious organisms, we all have a brain with a mind that allows us to be self-aware, that probably evolved from the basic genetics of bilateral symmetry. Let's think about what's going on there. If within a basic organism, you start building a multicellular body. When you're a cell, you're just a cell. You're a blob. And this might have a cytoskeleton, might give you some sort of shape. You might be able to move around like an amoeba. But at some point, we started doing multicellularity, and we had to get organized. And when we look at animal bodies, and plants do some similar stuff, a lot of them have what could be called radial symmetry. They work around circles. They just build tubes and channels and different things. But at some point, our ancestors picked up bilateral symmetry. And bilateral symmetry says we can make a choice. You could go left or right. You can be able to say either or, whatever works out for you. And once you've got that, once you have that either or choice, and that gets carried over from basic right-left differences. There's actually a gene that mutates, and you have a genetic condition called situs inversus. Situs inversus is a not unrare mutation where instead of having your heart lean to the left, it leans to the right. Instead of having your liver on the right side, it's over on the left. In males, instead of having your left testicle hang a little lower, your right testicle hangs a little lower. Everything that's asymmetrical gets sorted out because of one genetic mutation. Well, I like to think that there's parallels that evolve and that evolution doesn't throw anything out. When it got to the idea of evolving consciousness, when that piece of information was mutated and evolved, and it was used to develop some set of brain circuitry that we call consciousness. That's the fundamental issue with being self-aware. I can distinguish myself versus the environment. I can say, this is me, that's you. And then I can also have free will because I can make a choice. I can gather the information that's in my brain, a combination of all my biological impulses of emotions and feelings, along with all that stored mental information, which includes knowledge, and hopefully some scientific knowledge. And you can look at all that information through your neural circuits, and you can make a choice and say, I'm going to do A and not B. And that's the essence of free will, I think. And I'm preaching here, so this is what we're going to go with. So now, you're taking care of life, take care of life. You are knowing yourself, understand, you gain knowledge, you become a professional something. You're a contributor to society. You get to be with the adults. And then you're going to stand up for something. You're going to say, hey, this is what I think is important. And maybe it'll be the same thing as a whole bunch of other people, because that would be a really cool thing. If a bunch of us, if 8 billion of us could all say, hey, you know what? I think this is the most important thing. The commandments of the Church of Science might be it. But because we're going to follow this faith, we're going to say we're all going to behave in a certain way. We'll have to get to the book of Revelations for that. But that'll be in the Bioble, the Bible. The Bioble will be our new book of rules about how to behave. And once we do that, then we'll be able to say, all right, have a spine. And then what? And then celebrate diversity. Because once we had vertebrates, there are tens of thousands of species of vertebrates. Probably more. I think there's tens of thousands of species of mammals. But I honestly don't know, and you probably don't either. But we could go. If you could start counting them if you want. I know, but there's thousands. There's fishes and birds and reptiles and amphibians and mammals. There's all these vertebrates out there. There's a bunch of extinct ones. So we've had thousands and thousands of species of vertebrates, and they all had spines, and they all did something. They all stayed alive, and then the ones who became conscious, and other organisms might be conscious. We'll let them work out their own civilizations. We got to figure out our own for us humans, because that's then being civilized. Then accepting a set of rules is the difference between being human and being a Homo sapien. We're all Homo sapiens. We're all evolving social primates, but only humans. And that's, I realized, the problem with different civilizations. Because if somebody's not a member of your civilization, if they don't believe the same fundamental truths that you accept purely as a matter of faith, then they're a little less than human for you. How could they be? They're not civilized. How could they, if they don't believe that something like know yourself is an important feature of life, then fuck them. They don't know. They're stupid. I'm supposed to treat them less than human. But, well, now, depending on your rules, you might be nice to them. Anyway, we're going to be moving ahead here, and after we've taken care of life, we're taking care of life, we know ourselves, we stand up for something, then we got to celebrate diversity. That's where you have to step back and say, yeah, people are different. We might not believe exactly the same things, but we do believe a whole bunch of the same stuff, and that might be good enough in a lot of situations. Or young people come along and we know we're going to die, so we want to train them to carry on, to pick up the flag and carry the torch forward into the darkness. Do not go gently into that good night. And move ahead. And once we do that, then we're celebrating all the diversity. That loops back and helps us reinforce taking care of life. We can take care of the environment. We can take care of other people because we can appreciate that we don't have all the answers. We know part of knowing ourselves is knowing that we're ignorant, that we lack complete knowledge, that we're not gods. We define gods as something outside of us. And that's why. Oh, hold on. And that's where we are. Sorry about that interruption. But we're going through the commandments here, and we got the commandments of the Church of Science. And what we have, after we celebrate diversity, then we can start realizing, well, who we are and what civilization do we want to build. We become primates with opposable thumbs within the diversity of mammals. And just like that, we've got the diversity of humans. Billions of us have been able to survive over the last few thousand years. And it really started in the Holocene. We go to the book of the Holocene and say 11,000 years ago, we started to become civilized. We evolved consciousness well before that. We've been conscious making art probably for 50,000 years at least. But within the last 10, 11,000 years, the planet warmed up, moved out of the Ice Age, and we started domesticating crops and animals. We started farming. We started to build civilizations and stay in one place. And then the rules changed. We went from a lot of animist beliefs, trying to understand the essential nature of life, what some call the spiritual nature of life. And we're trying to sort out all that information. And what did we do? We came up with civilizations. We came up with different rules. We invented all these gods. We invented money. We invented technologies. And that's what we were doing for thousands of years, experimenting with different societies and different civilizations. And then eventually in the last 500 years, we figured out the colonial era. And the most recent Anthropocene age peaked up, is really part of the Industrial Revolution. We had the Enlightenment and the Scientific Revolution, and we mastered chemistry and physics. We had sciences that give us the fundamental properties of the universe. We could look at the smallest particles and manipulate them. And over the last century, we've learned how to manipulate biology and do genetic engineering. And so we need to, while celebrating diversity, we have to profess our faith in something. You have to become a professional. You've got to commit. So while you're standing up for something, you can have whatever you believe in and say, I think this is the most important things, but you also got to work. You got to work at something. That's what the Industrial Revolution gave us. It gave us the ability to work on something and say, what's going on? And while we're working on something, we are getting something done, and we're supporting ourselves, and we're contributing because we're professing our faith. We should respect all the professionals, all the people who have committed their life to one thing, or at least for a time period, and they're working on that. And that's how we're going to organize society. And so we're going to be a professional is going to be the next commandment. And that correlates with the colonial era. Because what the colonials did, whatever else you say about the colonizers, is they fucking took over the planet. The best example of the colonial empires was Great Britain. So I think some of us might really enjoy the British. I enjoy the British. And as much as you want to say they're assholes, but what they did is they took over a quarter of the planet. They are the biggest empire in history. And that's where we should decide what we're doing next. We should do an empire of one. We should make a global empire. That's what people are afraid of. They know people have abused power in the past, and that's why we need a good power system. But people are going to do it any different way. That's the fallacy of thinking you can avoid power structures. There's only so much wilderness out there, and there's not anymore. Really, we've taken over the planet. Humans have migrated into every nook and cranny that's habitable on the planet, and we've learned that absolute power is dangerous. That's the last age of the Anthropocene. The most recent estimate for the Anthropocene starts back in 1945, when they figured out the atom. They split the atom. They set off nuclear bombs and blew up whole cities over in Japan. And we don't want that to happen again. We don't want to destroy. People shouldn't have that much power. We need to have checks and balances in place that limit power for people. And so the last hypothesis is the last commandment is be careful. Take care of things, but keep experimenting. Make up new hypotheses. Come up with ones that say limit power, and that's where we are right now in the atomic age, in the information age, and we've got to figure out how to run the planet. And as Americans, if we want to run the planet, we have to find a functional system, and it's not what we've got right now with the yahoos who are running around and being bought up by power structures. We all have to get involved. But we can't do that until we've learned enough and acquired enough knowledge and each become professional enough that we can actually make good choices about how we should run society. And that's what we should be doing. Whew, sorry, got off today. I think I got the Bioble right. All right. Talk to you guys later.